Welcome to the Make You Famous podcast, where host Jeffrey Goldsmith talks with guests about fame and how to achieve it.
Thanks for listening in to the Make You Famous podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Goldsmith.
Anthony Pietromonaco is a Hollywood-based filmmaker who just released an unofficial Star Wars fan film. He studied something completely different at the University of Pittsburgh, and we met through an ad for a video maker on Craigslist. How random is that? Welcome, Anthony.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey. So, amazing. I mean, we must have met 7 or 8 years ago. I can't remember exactly, when I was at Catalog Spree.
Yeah, about 7 years ago, I think.
Yeah. And you've come quite far. I mean, at the time I didn't know it, but that was kind of your first client gig, right?
One of them for sure.
Yeah. And you did a great job. And now you've released the Star Wars fan film.
Yeah. It's been quite a ride. I never went to film school or anything, so a lot of the experience that I got, especially at the offset, was by responding to anyone who would hire me.
Right.
So Craigslist, local connections, worked with a lot of restaurants and small businesses and just things to keep the lights on. And now, gotten a little better at it. So trying to do more ambitious things. And here we are.
Right. Woody Allen said 90% of success is showing up.
I believe that's probably true. I mean, I think the other side of that is who you know, right? Who are you showing up for? So as long as you keep networking, I think, I remember one thing you told me actually, was that people like can do, and that was a strength whenever I didn't have necessarily the experience. So I did, that resonated with me, and it still does. It was something I tried to keep in mind, just trying to get it in work.
Yeah, I mean, if someone asks for something crazy and you say, I'll figure it out, and then you do, that's amazing. That puts you above 90% or 95% of other people who might have gotten the gig,
Yeah, and the reality is that I think most people, whenever they're trying to do something for the first time, I mean, the difference between a professional and a not professional, I guess, is the professional is paid for it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've done it before. Like, you have to say yes to things that you have no business doing and figuring them out if you want to advance. Otherwise, you would never do anything.
Right. Yeah. I was just spent the weekend with my uncle, who's a lithographer. He's done like stone lithos for many famous artists. And he told me about one of his early prints where there was these crazy bubbles, and he had been asked to do something he'd never done before when he started out, but he figured it out. And it was just like a sweating bullets moment, but everybody has to do those, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think if you're not terrified to be doing something, then you're probably stagnating or not doing something that you should be.
Right. A lot of people don't know this. It's a vast majority of humanity. And people have ambitions to make Star Wars movies or do TV commercials or make feature films, but they have no idea the kind of risks they need to take to do that, right?
Right. And, it's not to say that works out all the time either. You're going to fail like horribly, and there's going to be massive setbacks and everything, but you need those failures. You need, if you don't fail, then you'll learn infinitely more from a failure than a success. If you're not failing, then you're not growing.
Yeah. That's like it's a cliche, but it's true. If you're not failing, you're not growing. It's one of those things you hear and you're like, oh yeah, sure, I know that. But actually practicing that's a whole nother matter, right?
Yeah, especially when it doesn't work out.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the success first, and then we can talk about some massive failures if you want to. I interviewed Timothy Leary at one point. Totally, Details magazine, which doesn't exist anymore, rejected it because he was just a cranky fucker on the phone with me, and I was like, "There's no way they were going to publish it." Some of these interviews with great people did work out, but that one didn't. That was a huge disappointment on 30 years ago for me. Not quite 30, but it's getting there. So tell me, 25 years ago. So tell me about this film. Like, how does one go about making an unofficial Star Wars fan film without George Lucas and his lawyers losing their minds? Like, what? I couldn't believe it when I saw you'd done this.
Well, that's an interesting question. I spoke with a friend of mine who actually works at Disney and associated with Lucasfilm, and it's a huge gray area. You're kind of sticking your neck out there, and you're using a property that you have no ownership of, and there is a risk that you could get a cease and desist. And that's something that we knew going into it. The reason that you would do something like that is because of the internet, there's a connection between content creators, especially narrative content creators, and an audience that never existed before. There used to be these huge roadblocks in between getting people to see your stuff. And right now, if you want to, you can get in touch with those people. Fortunately or unfortunately, Star Wars fans are also the most critical audience that there is out there. I think George Lucas himself said that no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. And I don't think he means that they actually hate it. I think he means that Star Wars has like a spiritual quality to it. I think that's why it's gotten to be just the biggest property in media. It's the largest franchise out there. And we knew that. And this isn't the first time that we've made a fan film either. We've gotten cease and desists before. We did one for Naughty Dog's The Last of Us. That was something we did about 5 years ago. That was the first time that I had done a fan film. And the reason that we did that fan film and the reason that we did this one was because we don't just want to make content for content's sake. We want people to see what we're doing. We want people to be able to engage with it and respond to it. And we want people to hold it to a higher standard. So, I'm a commercial director by trade. That's how I keep my lights on. That's something that another side of my career that I've been developing for a long time. And, a lot of the people that I work with get paid to make content, but it's not content that they are passionate about. It's not content that they care about. We wanted to do something that was stylistic and really gave us the opportunity to flex our creative muscles. For all of those reasons, that's why we chose to do the Star Wars fan film. We actually just tacked it on to the end of another shoot that we had where I was able to pay the crew and have the gear. And, you pay for this stuff, oftentimes, at least the gear side, on a weekly rental. So we had 2 days at the end of the week where we didn't have to pay for the cameras and the lights and stuff. And so we were like, let's just make this other thing. It was premeditated. I'd been and developed. I knew I was going to do this. I was just waiting for the right opportunity. But I had written the script a year prior and had it storyboarded. So then we just pulled the trigger. So that's a long-winded way of answering your question, I think.
Well, there's a lot in what you've just said. First of all, fame by association is a great strategy to become famous, right? You're associating yourself with pre-existing content or pre-existing people. Like, I'm interviewing you, so I have a relationship with you in the media. If you did a film with such and such a celebrity, that helps bolster the value of your film because people already know who that celebrity is. So there's this association with other people, and so, or other franchises, as it were. So by doing a fan film, you're tapping into this existing base of people who are interested in Star Wars. But what you've also said is a famous Japanese novelist once said to me, his name is Nakagami Kenji. He's since died. He said, I asked him, so how did you write this epic novel? It was like Dostoevsky meets Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It was like 1,000 pages. he said, you must steal the time. And what you've done is when you say you tacked on this shoot to another shoot, you already had the equipment. That's the same thing, right? It's like skirting the system to make what you want to make, affordably, because people are like, how do I afford to get this equipment and get the soundstage and get the actors and get that? You just explained how you did it, right? You're in the process of making movies, right?
Movies. There was also an expense too. Like all the original stuff there. I think the total, but I don't know. Did I say that? The total budget on it was probably like $10,000, all things considered. But that was over the course of like a year and a half.
But that's cheap for what for is it a 10-minute movie? I just watched it this morning.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes, and then the post work on it was I did most of that. So
right,
you're talking about hours and hours and hours and hours.
Exactly, but you're an editor. So that translates to, at $1,000 a minute, you could make a 90-minute feature for $100,000.
Yes, I could.
Okay, well, there you go. And this is what Roger Corman set people, he would fund Coppola, etc., way back in the beginning. Here's a robotic crocodile. Here's a chick in a bikini. Have at it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, that's how it works.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't need to ask you, do you have lessons, do you have any words of advice for other people trying to do this? I think you've already done a Dharma transmission of that, right? Can do, show up, take risks, and if you're already shooting something, tack what you want to do onto that, pre-existing infrastructure.
Right, and I think more importantly than those things too, is to do something that you're personally very excited or invested in. I once was in the audience of listening to some other director talk, and he was just a guy that was pitching some studios. There's an inherent value in being excited about something. It's the one thing that is worth more, I think, than money. It's the one thing that people, at least in Hollywood, are searching for and capitalizing on frequently. If you are excited about something, whether it's Star Wars or social injustice or something that's just completely random, I think you have the ability to pass that on to somebody else. You have the ability through media, whether it's us talking right now or whatever, that excitement is currency. It's extremely valuable. So find what you're excited about and then just broadcast it as best you can. That's the best advice I think I could give to anybody, and the best advice that was ever given.
I think that's true, because it's like the road is long. Henry James, the 19th century novelist, said, life is short and art is long. So if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be able to go the distance. There's no way. I've been writing for years, and it's like you get rejected, you get successes, it's up and down all the time. My aunt and uncle, I just visiting them, they just moved from Chicago to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and they're still at it, decades and decades later. If they weren't passionate about it, they'd be accountants.
Well, it's funny. I was just talking to a producer that works for Morgan Freeman's production company too, and one of the metrics that they look at whenever you're looking at big movies is, am I willing to work on this for the next 7 years? And then they ask themselves, even if this didn't work out, at the end of 7 years, would it have been worth the journey to keep working on it for that long, regardless? And I think if the answer to that question is yes, whatever it is that you're doing is probably a worthwhile endeavor.
That's fair, because a lot of times projects don't work out, and it's like it's the journey. A friend of mine once said, "Are you learning?" I was complaining about something I was working on. It was just painful, and he was like, "Are you learning?" And I was like, "Yeah." So he's like, "Well, then it's worth doing." Because 7 years to end in failure, you might have learned a lot. There goes your cat's bright. There's your cat.
Yeah, he's getting a little annoyed.
Yeah, cat videos.
Warner guy. Calm down.
No one's made a Benji for cats.
Not yet.
So it's Benji meets Puss in Boots.
We'll get Antonio Banderas to play the voice, and success in the making for sure.
Or someone who sounds remarkably like Antonio Banderas.
We have Andy Garcia.
Who else? And then Marissa Tomei could play.
Christopher Walken could be like the father figure, you know.
Christopher Walken. Love that guy. You know who I want to interview for this, and I haven't pitched him yet, is John Waters. I met him in New York years ago. I need to get on that. I think he would offer some very funny advice. He once said, the one thing they don't teach you in film school is how to raise the money.
Oh my God, isn't that the truth? I mean, not that I went to film school, but that is the hardest part for sure.
Yeah.
We're in the process right now of raising money for a horror show, like a horror film. It'll be our first feature, most likely, and gotten pretty far way down the line, but that is just brutal. That is the worst. Asking people for money.
Well, but the question is if you work on it for 7 years, if it fails. So how much money do you need, Anthony?
Well, the target budget for this particular project is about $500,000. And if all goes well, a production company will match half, and we'll have a private investor who will bring half. At least that's the discussion that we're having. And all signs point to yes right now, but we just need to finish the script, which is pretty far way down the line to being completed.
Okay. So, I mean, you said a little while ago you could make a movie for $1,000 a minute, and now it's $10,000 a minute, but that's okay.
Well, it's the difference isn't what I can make it for. I mean, in reality, the production budget will be $1,000 a minute, but then you've got these inflated, I mean, I don't say inflated, very justified salaries of stars.
Right.
That legitimate, you know?
Yep. There's stars, there's insurance, there's catering, there's lighting. There's so many line items in all of this. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, though, I think, is when you write a script, if you put words on a page, the camera and the lighting and the locations and the crew tend to just show up. I'm not saying that they're easy to find, but if you're excited about something, you can get somebody else excited about it. You can get those things. They will always materialize. Yeah. It's those paycheck items, the stars, you know, and those other people who are unwilling to do something based on the merits of passion and excitement. You know, that's where things get expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good luck with that, Anthony. I'm convinced, seeing what you've done over the past 7 years, that you're going to do it.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to check out the book at makeyoufamous.co.